Hello and welcome to Two Words Wolves Pod. I'm Ryan Eichten and with me is Leo Sun. Leo, how you doing?
I am recovering. I think today's basketball game definitely helped me feel a little bit better. But yeah, so still recovering a little bit from about a pneumonia. All that said, though, I did have a chance, obviously, listen in to you and Travis's conversation, our last pod, about what's been going on over there in Minneapolis. And so, I'm going to share my 2 cents. I won't go on too long about it right now, but my heart definitely goes out to the Minneapolis community right now. I've had so many conversations with people at work and at home, and just friends about what's been going on over there. And it's really heartbreaking, if not frustrating. And again, Ryan, I'm with you. I feel like, maybe the Wolves probably shouldn't have played that game against the Cavs last Thursday, but still ongoing. So again, for any of you listening who are in Minneapolis or have loved ones in Minneapolis, again, I'm hoping all of you stay safe. And that y'all do what you need to do, because I know it's a little wild out there. And hopefully, Ryan, you and your family are continuing to stay safe, but also, doing what you can as well too. So yeah, it's extremely frustrating, but I'm sending well wishes to y'all from over here in the West Coast.
Yeah, like Leo said, if you want my my longer thoughts on the situation in Minneapolis and what everything's going on, you can go check out the pod last week with Travis, where we spent about 15 minutes going over everything that's going on. But yeah, it's been tough, and I don't know if I always feel this way, but at least we got some good basketball to talk about. It's hard to ride the line between like wanting to bring light to this stuff while also like trying to find fun in the basketball. But it's important to do both. And for this pod, we'll talk about the basketball while keeping in our thoughts, everyone that's been affected by all the ice stuff in Minneapolis. I know LA was kind of going through that. When was that? A few months ago, Leo?
Yeah, even over the summer, I think is when it began last summer. So
yeah, so tough situation. But at least the Wolves have provided, these last two home games have provided incredibly fun basketball. They played the Cavs back-to-back games, like Leo mentioned, the one Travis and I talked about at home, a nice solid win, and then they kind of get routed in the second half in Cleveland on Saturday afternoon. Kind of, if you'd have told me they'd split those two Cleveland games, I think everyone would have gone, yep, solid enough outcome. And certainly after tonight's win against the Spurs, taking 2 out of 3 against the Cavs Spurs is an excellent outcome. I don't know, like certainly can't hope for anything more there, especially weirdly, the Wolves were on a second night of a back-to-back night and had the rest advantage. That's kind of an oddity, but the Wolves played on noon on Saturday and only had to travel from Cleveland, while the Spurs had to play at Boston at, I believe, 7 or 6 o'clock Central and travel to Minnesota. So the Wolves, despite the back-to-back, had the travel advantage, and in a 1-point win, maybe you can take a little bit out of that. But yeah, that's what Leo and we're going to talk about. The Wolves 104-103 win against the Spurs, gives them 26 wins out of their first 40 games. So we're a game away from the midpoint here of the season. But the first topic, obviously, I want to talk about just kind of the down the stretch of the game. We'll save the 16-0 start by the Spurs for a little bit later. But I just wanted to go like Ant versus Wemby down the stretch. I think was just incredibly fun. Obviously, Ant gets the better of it. The shot with about 2 minutes left, where Ant is on the kind of the right baseline, cleared out, no one else on that side of the court, and he just hits like name your favorite two guard in NBA history: Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Dwayne Wade, like that type of shot to give the Wolves the lead. Barnes hits a 3, and Jaden and De'Aaron Fox trade buckets, and then basically last Wolves possession of the game, and gets switched on to Victor Wembanyama. He talked about after the game getting just like oh crap look on his face, and I think he did the right thing. He mentioned that Ant mentioned that he thought Wemby believed that he would take a jump shot, and that if Ant had taken that jump shot, Wemby would have blocked it. I think Ant did the right thing, and it wasn't Julius was sealing off his own man, and Ant used that as like a screen to get Wemby off of him enough to hit like a little running, banking, floating shot to give the Wolves the lead. And that's like my first big topic I want to talk about. It's just the the night and day difference between Ant in the clutch from one season to another. Obviously, like, his shot making has always been great. In that win they had against Oklahoma City, he hit that like fall away jumper 3-pointer to take the lead in that one, and he had a shot in Houston last year that was the same. And like, those are great to hit, obviously, but there's been a couple games now where down the stretch he just gets to like a good spot, and like the mid-range shot was a big topic of conversation in the offseason, and myself and others included were like worried that would start to dominate his game, and I don't think that that's what we've seen. It's been used exactly in this type of game where the ball movement for most of the fourth quarter was really good for the Wolves. Obviously, we talk about how it was not most of the beginning of the game, but just like, I don't think you can like count on ball movement alone to win you these close games against good teams. Like, especially like when you get closer to the playoffs, like, you're just a lot of times you just need your best player to go make a bleeping shot. And Ant did that twice. Jaden had a nice like semi-transition bucket as well to give the Wolves the lead. And they were able to, on the flip side, they were able to, mostly through Julius Randle and the lurking big, whether it was Nas or Randle, or Nas or Rudy, they were able to really shut down Wemby for most of the game, at least, especially down the stretch. But yeah, that was kind of my take on the late the late game process of the Wolves. What did you think, Leo?
Yeah, this is, I think a lot of people would say, a quote unquote bad game for Ant. He was not looking too good through three quarters. And I mean, he scored a little bit here and there, but we didn't get that Ant where it's like, okay, well, let me just put the offensive load on my shoulders and kind of carry it. And heading into the fourth quarter, I mean, you could say maybe it was his was a nagging foot injury or ankle or whatever it is that's been bothering him for maybe, his rotation, in the game was a little bit off. He kind of wasn't, I think there were certain times where he's on the bench where I was like, oh, usually on the court. But anyways, he still, let's just say this is a bad game for Ant heading into the fourth quarter, and then he still ended up scoring 23 points on your 50% shooting. He had an uncharacteristic night from the free throw line. He missed, I think it was three free throws. But if he didn't miss those, I mean, he would have just been 3 points shy of Victor Wembanyama's total, who looked like he was dominant through three quarters. And like you said, in the fourth quarter, Wemby went 0 of 4 from the field, while Ant went 4 of 5. The one miss that Ant had was one where it was after he hit that mid-range shot that you were talking about. He took one near the middle of the floor where he apparently thought he was fouled, and he kind of didn't get back in time and lets that Harrison Barnes three. But that was his only miss. And yeah, I mean, he just took really smart shots, like you said. I mean, I think it's kind of that weird inverse where you would think that someone of Wemby's size, and a lot of people hype him up for his basketball IQ and things like that. That Wemby would have been the guy attacking the paint a little bit more, but Wemby was, shooting a lot more perimeter shots. He was just kind of allowing Julius to get under him, push him out. I mean, it was a little reminiscent of Cat trying to ISO a little bit, where it's just he can't get past that like kind of lower center of gravity type of dude, or the really physical kind of guy. And yeah, and meanwhile, Ant on the other end, you would expect Ant as someone who people say like, oh, he loves just shooting step back threes from the left wing, that kind of thing. Where instead, like you said, he played the game in such a smart way in that final shot, the final go ahead shot that he made, where like you said, he had Wemby isolated top of the arc. I mean, how many times did you say before this season that in that situation, what's a percentage chance that Ant's gonna pull back for a step back three, whether it gets blocked or not, and instead he, like you said, he sees where Julius is, he uses Julius Seal as the screen and gets a fairly wide open, just kind of floater, like short banking floater off the backboard and in, and that's a great shot, smart shot, not contested, and it was an easy make. So it was just really, really cool to see him evolve in that way. I agree with you. If Ant continues to see the floor that he does and use his teammates and manipulate the floor in that way, that's just another step in that evolution of Ant. That yeah, he's getting better with the mid-range shot, but now he's learning how to read the court and attack the spots, and not just go for that hero ball shot every time.
Yeah, and I think when you compare it against Wemby, I think it's like a big it's an interesting comparison, and just given their age, like there's I don't know Wemby's age right off the top of my head. Let me punch it in quick. He's 22, so he's 3.5 years younger than Ant. I think that's like that just like going back to like the Rudy Gobert trade. I think Ant has learned so much about like that area of the game in the past few years, and really that mostly comes from the playoffs and reps. And it's not to criticize Wemby, who in this game was still dominant. Like, he only played 27 minutes, obviously, like, nice Wolves win. He was plus 17 in those 27 minutes. So they lost the 21 minutes he was not on the court by 18. The Spurs did. So if obviously, I don't think, like, obviously if they played him 5 extra minutes, that they win those 5 extra minutes by 5 points. Like, it doesn't always work like that, but obviously, like, the Spurs were dominant in his minutes and struggled when he was not out there, which is notable given he wasn't playing a full range of minutes. But I like you kind of noted, Wemby's shot diet is something that, like, I don't mean to, like, go full Shaq on it, like we're like getting the paint big fella like he does with Cat and to a lesser extent Rudy, but I also just like he takes half his shots early in this game, half his shots from three. I just don't get that. Obviously, he can make them. He made a third of them tonight. He probably, I don't know what his season percentage is, but like he's a good 3-point shooter. But like I just think, and again, it's mid January, so if like the explanation for this is like we don't want him to get hurt, which totally get that. But like a guy who's 7.5 foot tall taking half his 3-point shots from three, I just think is a missed opportunity. And I marked it down. So he took 9 3-pointers, 5 mid-rangers, and 4 in the paint. And obviously he takes 10 free throws. 4 of them were from the Rudy flagrant foul, step-in foul. So I marked, it was 4 trips to the line from, so even if you factor those 9 threes to 8 shots in the paint, like I don't know. I just don't think that that's enough. And I would point to it as a reason they lost the game. He shoots 8 of 18 from the field. And that's just one aside, but like down the stretch of the game, Ant was able to get easy buckets, good looks. I wouldn't say easy buckets, that turnaround from the baseline to with like 2 minutes left. It's not an easy shot, but like the Wolves offense, I thought was generating much better looks for their offense. And both teams had like a Spider-Man meme for Julius Randle and Harrison Barnes taking crappy 3-pointers, kind of right back and forth at each other. But I just thought the Wolves offense down the stretch of the game was able to generate looks much better than the Spurs offense, which was kind of more getting like Wembanyama fall away jumpers, which obviously he can make, and especially with his height, like those aren't, to call them contested shots would be maybe not necessarily true because you got to get all the way up there or whatever. But I don't know. I just thought that was, if we're thinking about like toward the playoffs and what like the Spurs can be or what I do think like the Wolves are going to have like that type of advantage, like the veteran advantage, the down the stretch advantage over the team like the Spurs. And it's kind of been, they didn't have Wemby in the first game, and even today, again, didn't play his full range of minutes. But I think it's been 2 games against the Spurs where the Wolves have shown like down the stretch, like they're going to have the advantage.
Yeah, shout out to Julius Randle though. Yeah, that was a rough 3 that he took, but I mean prior to that, the Wolves really regained that momentum all the way that they broke through. They took the lead because of Julius Randle with about 3.5 minutes left in the game, where in a 25-second stretch, he scored 5 points off 2 offensive rebounds. And that's just that want to, where it's like all of us would be dying for Julius Randle to rebound like that on the defensive end of the court. But in the meantime, we'll take it on the offensive end because, again, he was just playing so strong down there on that end of the court and, reading the missed shots, putting that extra effort in. And like we kind of mentioned earlier, too, on the defensive end of the court against Wemby, I mean, Rudy was clearly struggling against Wemby, and he had some moments. He got a couple stops, but Julius really seemed to get under his skin, where he was just like, "All right, like I'm gonna be just super physical with him, literally physically move him out of his spots." And I think one of the highlights of the game has to have been when Wemby had Julius isolation, and he was trying to dribble around Julius, and Julius just push him all the way out to the 3-point line, where eventually Wemby just kind of stepped out of bounds. And it's one of those plays segments where a ref could have easily called a blocking foul, bodying, playing too hard or whatever. But Julius obviously knew how the refs were calling it, and he played it perfectly. And I think that really set the tone where Wembanyama was like, you know what? I don't know if I want to try and push Julius Randle into the paint to try and score like, a paint shot or try to shoot a layup. I'm just going to settle for like these contested, mid-range or even 3-pointers late in the game. And so, again, we got to credit Julius for setting that tone on the defensive end for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're going to defend Wemby, because he's just there isn't a player that is going to match his height, you're probably better off using strength. going with someone that has strength, and obviously Rudy has plenty of strength too, but like they're obviously the Wolves' strongest guy in the team is Randall, and I think that's your best bet because as I talk about like his points in the paint, if they had guarded him with a less strong defender, maybe a lot of those mid-range jumpers aren't mid-range jumpers. They're little hooks in the paint. I did one of his shots in the paint was crazy. He picked up his dribble basically right behind the free throw line. I don't know if you remember this play. Wemby picked up his dribble from beyond the free throw line, and the possession ended with a layup. I showed my wife. I was like, "What is this? Like, this is insane." And it's kind of one of those games where, like, you go, I thought there was a lot of low hanging fruit for Wemby as a player to like pick through in this game, especially offensively. Defensively, not as much. He was dominant. Like, obviously, we talk about Rudy winning Defensive Player of the Year. If Wemby ends up winning it, I don't like. I think the games played might be the thing for him, but like, I think that would. I don't think there would be too much uproar from Wolves fans, at least not from me. Like, he's incredible on that end.
Yeah, I mean, he deterred a ton of shot attempts by the Wolves just from being there.
Stop throwing lobs over Wemby, please.
Yeah, I noted that where Dante in the first quarter was trying to throw lobs to Rudy over Wemby. He was like, what? Why are we? And to his credit, Dante got one over him eventually. But yeah, there's at least 2 turnovers, I think, just trying to attempt that. But I will say, I mean, Wemby was not accredited with one single block, even though he averages over 3 a game. And I think Alan Horton was talking about in the broadcast that he's just prior to the game that he's 1 away from 500 blocks. And they're like, well, he's obviously going to get that today. He averages like 3.5 blocks or, whatever. He didn't get a single one today. So, I mean, credit the Wolves for, not putting Wemby or not shooting the ball in a position where Wemby could get the block. But yeah, like you said, Wemby still is just a force out there, like the switching that he does, the way he makes the ball have to move to the other side of the court. I mean, it's pretty crazy. So yeah, credit to him. But it was a fun game though. I mean, obviously it's fun now that we won. It was not so fun when the Wolves started 16-0. But Ryan, did you want to talk a little bit about the ball movement of the Wolves at the start of the game towards the end of the game?
Yeah, one last point of this, specifically on the Spurs game, I did want to touch on. So in the first game they played the Spurs, their guards were able to get into the paint like seemingly every single time, and that was a big difference between this game where those guys were not doing that nearly as much. Fox had a couple years ago he won Clutch Player of the Year. He had a couple of those buckets down the stretch where he gets into the paint, hits a shot, but so De'Aaron Fox, Stephon Castle, and Dylan Harper, they finished with a combined 23 points, but from the field they were 8 of 35, which I don't have the other box score up from the other game, but like those guys were like a big difference maker why the Wolves were able to win. And we'll kind of talk about the Cleveland game too, but I think that's a big indicator for me of like, I thought the perimeter defense in the Cavs game, the second road loss, was a big issue. And really for the Wolves, the 2 main things, I think the Wolves, like why they win games or why they don't, or like every team has good and bad games, right? And like the reasons why when games go poorly for the Wolves, it's either their ball movement dries up or their perimeter defense just doesn't do a good enough job, and there's only so much Rudy Gobert can do after that. And so like this game is a perfect example of the good side of that. The ball movement came and went, but like the perimeter defense was just night and day compared to the second half of that Cleveland game.
Yeah, it's just it's frustrating because I feel like it's a tale as old as time with like the Anthony Edwards Timberwolves, where it seems like it's going to be a matter of focus with the team. And it's that quote that he said, a couple weeks ago, where we followed the game plan and that's how they won. That quote that Ant said, where it's like when they follow the game plan and they do what they're supposed to do, what the coaches say they should be doing, they look dominant. And I understand it's easier said than done. It's like, well, why don't they lock in for 48 minutes for 82 games for the season? That's not the way that, humans work, right? So I get it. But it is a thing where it's like a matter of like, okay, well, how can you look so different even within a single game between like quarter to quarter or half to half? And again, I honestly think, I hate to say this because it's kind of subjective. We can never go into the brains of the players and know what they're thinking, but like it seems like it's a matter of focus for them. And so, yeah, I think as they continue to move forward, the goal is for them to continue to get better at that and build those better habits. Ryan, we talk about it all the time on our previous episodes that, they're supposed to be building these good habits so that in the playoffs, you know, when they get tired, when things get hard, they can fall back on these habits of like not letting their focus go and not letting Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell get to the paint to get whatever they want every time. So, we'll see what happens from here. They are in the middle of this kind of, we said last week when we recorded after the Wizards game, it's a tough 7-game stretch against, pretty good teams. We'll talk about the schedule later, but they're more than halfway through it. And like you said, would you take a 2-1 split against the Cavs and the Spurs, and also just take that Miami win as well too? So technically like 3-1. Yeah, that's pretty good. But we'll see what happens as they continue to move through this week.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Obviously, they've won 4 out of 5 games since, or 5 out of 6 since that brutal New Year's Eve Atlanta loss, and like effort was a big point of that. And that was certainly applicable then. I thought, I mean, effort wise, even in the Cavs loss has been either somewhere between fine to great, obviously, from game to game. But like, I think there's a difference between like effort, which is usually just like I said, fine to great, and then like attention to detail or attention to gameplay, like all like that type of stuff, which comes and goes with every team. And when it goes with the Wolves, I think like the perimeter defense stuff and making sure like that stuff gets communicated went. In that Cavs game, it was pretty brutal. I counted, they got 5 stops that entire fourth quarter, which is basically like rebounds off of missed field goals and turnovers. 5. And a big thing, like the Cavs just didn't turn it over. I think 8 turnovers the entire game. I think that just shows like that entire game they weren't bothering the Cavs at all. And a lot of that is like the Cavs are really good offense. Last year they were the best offense in the league. Now they're 8th. I think they'll probably they've been injured a lot. They'll probably hammer that out. Like, would it surprise me if the second half of the season the Cavs had the best offense in the NBA? No, it wouldn't. Like that's a really good offense. So like the poor defense that game had a lot to do with the Cavs themselves. But I rewatched that fourth quarter with the 5 stops, and like the biggest things were like guys were just getting absolutely destroyed on screens, and they probably needed to be called out better, navigated better, all that stuff. A couple of times they lost track of shooters. Sam Merrill apparently doesn't miss. Rotations on the back end, like of a play. There's a play where Ant kind of rotated up, and Rudy was sealed off, and Julius needed to cut down to the paint, and it was a tough read, but like it just didn't happen. And then it's just like in these games when they have bad defensively, it's not to blame Rudy, but it's basically like the minute Rudy stops being the greatest defender in the world and just turns into like a solid defender or whatever, they just hemorrhage points. So it's like it's absolutely not to blame Rudy, but like probably could have done a better job on X play or whatever. Mobley scored on him a couple times. Like, again, it's like there's only so much he can do when like the guards are just not containing the ball well enough. And after a lot of these teams, you'll hear Finch say that, like, ball containment. And that's what, again, we don't need to always compare this team to 2 years ago defensively. I don't think that this roster is a fair standard for that. Like they've lost Nikhil, the swap for Cat for Randall. Nikhil's or Kyle Anderson's gone too. That was a big thing for the defensive team 2 years ago. So like the personnel is different, but like that was one thing that team did 2 years ago, is like the ball containment was almost always awesome.
Yeah, I just wasn't a fan of the Wolves leaders in that second Cavs game, the morning game where they got blown out, because it looked like the Wolves took a double-digit lead, if I remember correctly, in the first quarter of the game, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But then after the early part of the second quarter, I remember I put it on Blue Sky. I was like, dude, like this Wolves defense, this is when they were rotating all over the place. Dante was blocking shots. Jaden was blocking. Everyone was everywhere, and it was great. And then forced the Cavs to call a timeout. From there, I just really didn't like that energy from both Ant and Julius. They just almost looked like apathetic, kind of like, all right, like, if they're just going to hit threes, and it kind of is what it is, and again, it's like you said, maybe it's that attention to detail where, there were times they rolled out a zone. I put a clip out there on Blue Sky as well too, where there was, I think it was the third quarter, fourth quarter, where, someone on the Cavs drives in and then kicks it out. And then like the rotation on the 3-2 zone that they were running was completely jumbled up, where Nas just kind of got hung up on a guy and then ended up with like a wide open Jalen Tyson layup from the weak side on the swing. And it was just like, well, Like what's going on there? And I don't think it's a matter of, oh well, Nas doesn't want to go and get him or whatever. It's just that attention to detail where it's like, okay, this is my zone. And I need to make sure I'm not getting back cut. I'm not getting screened off from that. It just wasn't there. And so I think that kind of trickled down for both Ant and Julius. I just felt like their defensive effort was not there at all. So yeah, it is a thing where they still have time to course correct. Who knows if there's gonna be some roster moves. I personally, just from what I've heard and just what I would expect, I'm not expecting a move, even though there is rumblings of, okay, yeah, maybe getting a bench score or someone that can help kind of provide a little bit more offensive punch. But defensively, I don't think they're going to be adding too many different players into the rotation that are going to be huge difference makers in terms of, I mean, maybe someone buys out Kyle Anderson and we pick him off, for free and he plays a couple minutes. Who knows? But I'm not banking on that. They definitely just need to continue to find ways to lock in and really focus on in the film sessions. Like, how do we come back? I mean, you look at that Spurs game tonight. I mean, they start the game off down 0-16, and it was just a rough look. I mean, the Spurs were, hitting every single shot out there, but I mean, the Wolves just were not getting after it in the places that they needed to be. They looked a little bit shell shocked. They looked a little bit like, oh well, we'll just kind of get it back on the offensive end, and they weren't. And when they weren't getting stops either. So
yeah, and it's like I didn't think that Cavs loss was all like a concerning one. Obviously, like there's plenty of more concerning losses. It's just like I will say it all season. It's like it's not like the bad games aren't really the problem. It's like, what does the next game look like? What did the other games look like? And their defense, other than that game, has been solid really these past couple games, and it was really good down the stretch of the Spurs games. Like that's what they need to keep doing. Is like, you had a bad game, so what? Like, let's see what the next one looks like. And even on the second night of a back-to-back, again, the slight travel advantage on San Antonio looked really good. But in both games, like you mentioned, the ball movement was it came and went. I would say in the first half, especially the first quarter of that Cavs game, it was awesome. That was probably as well as like an 8-minute stretch as they've played all year. It was awesome, and it just kind of never, that ball movement never really came back. And for that Cavs game, it's not, the offense on the whole was great that game. They scored a bunch of points, like efficient offense. So it's not really to like pick on that game offensively, because like if they defended half well in that game, they would have won. But especially in the second half and the third quarter, the ball movement slowed down, and a lot of ISO possessions, a lot of dribbles from Julius. There's a stat out there that Julius had like 24 dribbles and 0 passes in a stretch. Like, that's just not good enough. And then tonight they score 42 points in the first half. Like, that just not nearly good enough to on offense. The ball moving dried up, but kind of in a reverse of the Cavs game, down the stretch of the fourth quarter, it was back. It was awesome. As again, that fourth quarter against the Spurs is probably as well as they've played in any game as well. And so I just think trying to find more consistent is for the Wolves don't run a very structured offense. They have down the stretch of games, which I think has been good to see. Like, they've run more Ant Rudy pick and rolls, or like we saw tonight, just kind of Ant ISOs on good spots of the floor. But like in the course of the game, they're not going to run a hugely structured offense. I mentioned this last night, they're closer to the Dynasty Warriors running around with stuff than they are the Harden Rockets running pick and rolls all game. So ball movement and player movement are just like are non-negotiables in this type of offense. And it just comes and goes a little bit too much. But even when I say that, last year in the postseason, the first 2 rounds of the postseason, I thought like that type of stuff was pretty much on point. And so maybe in mid-January, you're just bound to run into a stretch of a couple quarters where it's just not going to be ideal.
Yeah, we're seeing glimpses of when they're doing things the right way, and when they are, it looks amazing. Even if the shots aren't falling. I mentioned this in my notes for this game as well too. I think in the first half of the game, the Wolves are getting a lot of 3-point shots that were makeable. I mean, I don't know how many of Dante's threes just barely hit the back of the rim and back out in that first half, and so they were getting looks that should go down. So that's okay, as long as they continue to stay at it, which they did in the second half. I was looking at the total game stats at the end of the Spurs game as well, too, where we talk about ball movement. I mean, the Wolves had 23 assists on 39 field goals, which is like okay. But you look at the Spurs; they had 19 assists on 34 field goals, which is like wow, damn. like we had more than they did, which is a little bit surprising, just considering the type of basketball the Spurs play. So, yeah, I think as long as we're seeing like the glimpses of it, and it's becoming more and more regular occurrence, which I feel like again you mentioned since that New Year's Eve game, the Wolves have been playing a lot better and have been moving the ball better. You just want to keep pushing it in the right direction, and I think the proof of the wins and the effectiveness on the court will make the players want to continue to do that. Want to make them continue to feed Rudy on the short roll. Want to continue to make them swing the ball from side to side, kickouts. Those type of things. I think it'll reinforce them to be, hey, look, like this is working. Let's keep at it and let's make it more consistent. So yeah, I think we'll continue to see that. They still have a couple of tough opponents upcoming, so we'll see.
Yeah, and then the last thing would be just winning the possession battle is huge. Tonight they did that. They had a couple more offensive rebounds and 5 fewer turnovers. Like that's 7 possessions that the Wolves got that the Spurs didn't. And against the Cavs, it was the exact opposite. Especially like the turnovers were a big discrepancy. And obviously like field goal percentage and 3-point percentage are like the number one outcome, but like turnovers and rebounds, like the 4 factors the Wolves broadcast often shows, like those are the next 2. All right. Lastly, I wanted to bring up, I know we talked about Beringer last pod, but I wanted to do it again because Jack Borman of Locked On Wolves had a really good question to Timberwolves quote unquote head coach Micah Nori in this game about Beringer's minutes, lack of real-time rotation minutes, and then just like the 3 bigs. So Jack asked, instead of just asking like why doesn't Beringer play, Jack asked a good question about prioritizing the minutes for Julius, Naz, and Rudy over Beringer, or is it more just like not feeling like he's ready? And I'm just gonna read Mike Nori's quote. Yeah, I think the one thing, this is quote, yeah, I think the one thing is kind of like, I mean, I don't want to disrespect Derek Jeter here by any means, but it's kind of like being the backup shortstop for the Yankees for 20 years. And what I mean by that is I don't care who you are, meaning Joan, is going to be very, very good. But when you've got 3 guys, Julius is playing at an all-star level, Rudy, when he goes, we know what he's brought this year. He's probably going to get or should be right there for his 5th defensive player of the year. And then you're talking about Naz, the 6th man. So I think a lot of it is that's 96 minutes. And if you think you just divide those 3, that's only 32 minutes a guy. So I think a lot of it just comes down to the fact that there's not enough minutes. And it's nothing against Joan. It's just a luxury for us that we have these 3 guys that are very good 4s and 5s. So to sum it up, there's just not enough minutes at the big position. And I certainly get that. And I agree that playing Beringer at the expense of those 3 guys, and it specifically like Naz, I don't think is the way to go. So with that said, my next would be interesting to think if/when one of those guys goes out, is Beringer the next man in the rotation? And my suspicion is that if Naz or Julius miss a game, Beringer still will not get run. That's off of no information, and obviously Micah's quote kind of says the opposite. But I think in that situation, they play Jaden Moore at the 4. They'd go a different direction with that. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my view. But if Rudy were to miss a game, then I think that might be different. But with those 3 guys healthy, the only way to play Beringer without lowering those guys' minutes would be to play Rudy, Julius, and Naz together, and they haven't really done that because I don't know. I'm guessing they just don't think that's a very good lineup. I would like to see it just to see what it looks like a little bit more throughout the course of the game. It'd put a lot defensively on Naz. I don't know who the other, obviously Ant would be the other person in that lineup. And then would you run with? I would probably want to have Jaden out there too, just to give it a little bit extra. I'd be really curious, and it'd be fun to mix and match that lineup. But they haven't really gone to that. And so if you were able to play that lineup, that would mean the Beringer's minutes would come at the expense of either Mike or Bones or Jalen Clark, which sounds a lot more palatable than taking minutes away from any of the top 6 guys. So yeah, what did you think of Micah's response? I found it interesting that he invoked the Yankees, which the owner of the team was kind of in a way, if you twist your brain a little bit, was the backup shortstop to Derek Jeter there for a minute. But what did you think about Micah's response and just kind of playing Beringer in relation to the other three bigs?
Yeah, that was notable. I mean, obviously they're high on Yoan. It's a thing where is that just lip service? I mean, obviously you want to pump up your guy. You're not going to say, oh well, he's like kind of 2 years away from being 2 years away right now. I mean,
For
they're
sure.
not going to say that. But Yoan has proved with Iowa that he is ready to contribute. At some level, like he has skills. He's not like, oh, well, he has no idea what he's doing or he has no skill set yet out there. Um, and so, when you talk about it, it's like, I want to jump ahead. We have a little segment about this later, but we might finally get to see some limited minutes because Rudy will not be playing against the Milwaukee Bucks
That's true.
after he accumulated a flagrant foul today on Wemby on a reckless closeout. And so he's too far up on his flagrant and technical points. So now he's going to be missing that next game unless it gets overturned, which most likely it will not be. So yeah, we'll see how it looks against a team where they're probably going to need long, lanky bodies against Giannis Antetokounmpo on Wednesday here or Tuesday when they play him. But I continue to believe that, yeah, same as you, that Yoan's really only going to get opportunities, barring when something happens to Rudy, Julius, or Nas. And again, I also agree with you. It's like if it's Nas or Julius missing some time, yeah, I do agree that they're probably going to lean more guard heavy. It's like, okay, well, more opportunity to get Mike some more minutes or to get Jalen Clark more minutes or TJ, which there was an update on TJ Shannon today that he is progressing well from his foot injury, but there's still no clear timetable for his return yet. So he still might be out a couple weeks there. But yeah, it does seem like that's what they've done in the past. I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to lean that way if Nas or Julius are in foul trouble or have to miss a game for whatever reason. Um, that said, I think what really stuck out to me about that quote from Micah is that, do you think they would say the same thing about Rob Dillingham that they would about Yoan? Saying like, hey, we got some really good guards right now. Dante's playing at a high level, Ant's playing at a high level, and it's just tough because we think Rob's really, really good, but it's just he's stuck behind this because I don't feel like they would probably get the same. Now we don't have to jump into a whole Rob Dillingham discussion again. We do that all the time. But I do feel that the response about Yoan is a little bit different because he's kind of proven himself maybe at the lower level. Maybe that means Rob should go to be assigned to Iowa maybe for a little bit. I mean, he played, I think it was 2 games total last season with Iowa, so it's not a lot of time. And clearly he's pretty low on the depth chart right now. And you kind of see Yoan going back and forth, even though Yoan was also a first round draft pick as well too. So look, and I'll say this: I'll be just as excited as anyone when Yoan gets opportunities to play real minutes that's not in garbage time. I'm high on him, even though I don't feel like he's quite ready right now to handle non-Rudy minutes or the backup Rudy minutes, full time. But hopefully we'll get to see a little bit of that on Tuesday.
Yeah, and I think your point on Dillingham is no, I don't think they would have the same quote if you asked why Dillingham isn't playing because a question like that was asked about Shannon before his injury, and Finch. It was more Shannon was in the rotation at the time, but the question was like, why doesn't he play more? And Finch gave a whole explanation about where Shannon's defense was at the time. So I think if you asked about Rob, you'd get a similar explanation about what parts of Dillingham's games are preventing him from playing. So maybe that's notable that Beringer is closer to play, and I did kind of forget that Rudy will be missing next game, assuming I would be surprised if they took the flagrant away from him for suspension. And one note with that is now every flagrant foul Rudy has the rest of the season will be a 2-game suspension. Which tonight it's hard to blame him for the flagrant, right? Like I do kind of think like tonight is a lot different than like his last flagrant where he obviously purposely
he chucked Mark Williams.
Yeah, like that's a lot different. And I'm not arguing about a rule change or anything. I'm just saying like pointing out like, and it was something I remember when he picked up that flagrant against Mark Williams and there was basically like 50 games left in the season. I was like, I mean, what if he just has like one of those step in foul, like the one I described this one? What if that happens? He'll get suspended. And that's the risk. And the like if there was complaining about that, it's like, well then don't have 4 other flagrants this season. So it will be interesting, immediately juxtaposed with Micah's statement. Well, now there's 30 minutes that the Wolves have to pick up. Especially in the exact player type that Beringer most resembles. I think it'd be kind of silly not to give Beringer some run, even while noting that I do think he's going to be incredibly raw. in his game. So I think Jalen Clark.
Johan's gonna have 6 great personal fouls to give up on Giannis, so I
Yeah.
feel like put him in there.
Maybe
He's
try to
obviously not gonna
find
stop him. But
maybe try to find Beringer some non-Giannis minutes. That'd probably be good. Give I think Jalen Clark should play a bit more than the 9 minutes he played tonight as well. That'd probably be a good added to the rotation. Give him some Giannis assignment. It'll be a tough cover, but the Bucks just lost to the Nuggets without Jokic and Murray tonight, so hopefully the Wolves can grab a win there. But let's move on to our Apex Alphas this week. Mine, we've already been talking about him. Micah Nori just keeps picking up wins, man, as the head coach. Finch out with an illness tonight. Micah Nori steps right in and grabs a win against a tough Spurs team. So that's no brainer for Micah this week's Apex Alpha.
Yeah, it's gotten to a point now where you almost want to wish, like, all right, for a big game, let's go ahead and put Micah Nori in, baby. Like, Finch, go ahead and take a seat. But hopefully Finch. Yeah, hopefully
the first time was when Mike destroyed his knee out in Phoenix. Like, yep. I don't know if we need to do that again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, hopefully not that bad. Hopefully Finch recovers quick. I believe he's out with the illness and didn't want to, contaminate his team. And
sure.
Trust me, as someone that was sick, I know the illnesses suck. So hopefully he recovers faster than I did. Surely he has a better medical staff than I was treated with. But yeah, I love to see Micah Nori, continue to come in, and he's always been like a candidate for a head coaching job. And I think Finch said it. I forget when it was earlier this season, but he's like, my goal is to try and get Micah out of here. Like, I want to get him a head coaching job or whatever. And the way that he's been coaching and the way that he's been handling the team certainly, is justifying that he deserves a head coaching position at some point. So. My Apex Alpha, I'm going with 2 words, Naz Reid. He's been a huge spark plug. We're looking at these last 2 games since you last recorded against the Cavs in the loss, and then today the Spurs win. He's averaging 21 points on 53.3% field goal percentage. He's made 4 threes a game. These last 2 on average on 61.5% 3-point shooting, adding 8 rebounds a game, 2.5 assists, 1.5 blocks. And I didn't even know this when I chose Naz Reid, but I pulled the numbers. Last 2 games, plus minus, he's at a plus 9.5, which leads the team. And again, he is what he is on the defensive end. I kind of laugh about this. I posted this, I think it was a couple weeks ago. The Wolves were on Peacock, and they talked about, Tracy McGrady talked about, like, oh yeah, Naz Reid, he played really, really good. And I think that when Rudy is out, Naz Reid could really anchor down that defensive end of the court, block shots and stuff. And I'm like, okay, like, clearly, T-Mac is not watching it to the Wolves game, so it's whatever. But yeah, I mean, Naz Reid on the defensive end, I mean, he does suffer in terms of, off the ball, rebounding the ball. We know where he's weak at, but again, I'm picking him as an Apex Alpha because of what he's been doing, especially on the offensive end of the court. I don't want to jump ahead of our episode right here, but I mean, his performance does definitely make me wonder if he should get a larger role, whether it's with the Wolves or somewhere else. But he's been killer. I mean, like, he really kept the Wolves in it today against the Spurs. In that third quarter, he was starting to get going, get loose, and he had a couple blocks as well, too. He had a couple big stops in important spots as well, too, for the Wolves. So, yeah, Naz Reid is my Apex Alpha for these last 2 games.
Yeah, just need to see more consistency from Nas. Just a few too many down games from him, especially like you mentioned. If he were he'd be a starter on probably most teams, I would say. Like, it just needs kind of more night-to-night consistency. But like you mentioned, was despite not knocking down as many shots as you'd like to see, percentage-wise, had a solid game tonight. All right, next one, Prey of the Week. Leo, who did the Wolves make their prey?
I'm going to have to say Rudy Gobert made the Wolves their prey. Again, we talked about it earlier. I think he got caught too much into that Wemby matchup. I think there's a lot of, there's always that clip that surfaces of Wemby when he was, I think, like 18 playing Rudy one-on-one, and it was kind of a tough back. He was kind of beating Rudy one-on-one, and I think he just really caught a whiff of like Wemby's domination like in this game and just got like way too thirsty trying to chase that, ergo that flagrant foul that he accumulated by closing out way too recklessly. Like, you got to know, like, at first I thought, oh, did Wemby kind of kick out, but it's like, no, Rudy just kind of went running into his space, and I think that was on like an offensive rebound. It was like his second 3-point attempt. Like, I think Wemby missed one, he got the rebound, he went after the second one, Rudy just kind of crashed like way into his space, and so he got that flagrant foul. Like we said, he's going to be suspended for that next Bucks game, which sucks. But I think more importantly is that it really killed that fourth quarter momentum at the time when it happened, because that's 3 free throws, and then the Spurs got the ball after that. And so he ended up on the bench. I believe it was after that flagrant that he picked up. And when he came back right in the game, first play of the game, when he comes back in, before a single second comes off the clock, inbound situation, Rudy cracks Wemby. Wemby kind of sells it, but Rudy does kind of get him with a high elbow, knocks Wemby to the ground, awards the Spurs away from the play, before the inbound foul, where it gives them an additional free throw for Wemby. And again, just another costly foul by Rudy at that time. And I only say this because Rudy has been playing so well for the past couple of weeks or the past month or two that you expect Rudy to be a little bit better than this. But I just feel like, again, he got caught up a little bit too much in that kind of trying to challenge his countryman Wemby, and Wemby playing so well that he really got caught. He got lost in the sauce today, and Rudy was the prey.
Yep. That's kind of been a pattern with him. Although, I mean, I don't think I for the kick out foul or the running into a space on the 3-pointer, I don't know if that had to do with it, like the Wemby matchup as much, but like you mentioned, the away from the play foul, I certainly think falls into that category. And I already mentioned this, like the suspension, the fault of it wasn't tonight. It's the other flagrant fouls that he accumulated earlier in the season. All right, my prey of the week, the Wolves made their prey, the legs of their fans. So the Wolves don't score for the first 4 minutes and 38 seconds of the game with a timeout in there by by head coach Micah Nori. I don't know if someone put it out or if I could go find it, but it feels like that's the longest that they've gone without scoring since D'Angelo Russell, of all people, started this tradition of standing at the start of games. Yeah, just kind of a funny quirk that, I mean, when they started doing this, obviously that was my first thought, is like, one of these games they're going to go forever without scoring, and everyone's going to be waiting on them to put something in the bucket.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I was late catching up to the game, so I was watching kind of playback on DVR, and it was one of those, like, how long is this gonna go? Like, it's 16-0. Yeah, we're getting into like close to the middle of the quarter here, where it's like, what if this goes like, the whole quarter? Like, what if they never score? But it's kind of funny. I feel like someone could easily Photoshop in, at minute 4 of this drought, when the Wolves fans are still standing, that, they should Photoshop D'Lo in the background, getting shots up, getting ready. So, yeah, it's definitely one of those traditions. I wonder how long that's going to last. I mean, it definitely seems like it's lasted way past, D'Lo's time here. And it's one of those things where I feel like, say this continues to go on for, say, 5 years from now, in 2031 or whatever, some young fans going to be like, wow, this is a really cool, like, tradition that the Wolves have. Where did this come from? And there's like, let me tell you the story about a man named a one-time All-Star named D'Angelo Russell that used to be on our team. And it'll be a funny story, I think, in Wolves lore.
Yeah, D'Lo's biggest contributions were that, and then if you go watch the lottery where the Wolves win and they get Ant from it, D'Lo's there from. Them and the Warriors are the top 2 picks, and it's him and Steph, and it's during the pandemic, so D'Lo's by a pool just fist pumping for the Wolves winning the lottery. But
he beat cornrow Steph Curry, I think, in the lottery, so never forget it.
Exactly. All right, last topic here, the playtime segment, where we kind of go around the league. And news this week was that the Grizzlies are starting to entertain Ja Morant trade ideas, and obviously the Wolves are always in the mix for this type of trade, especially a point guard. And I just wanted to lay out kind of, if the Wolves wanted to do it, what could they do? So the first trade would be basically Julius for Ja, would be money wise, would get you pretty close. And I just think like that's a non-starter basically right off the bat for the Wolves. And even if the Memphis was throwing in extra assets, which I don't think they'd really be willing to do, but like, I just think Julius scoring wide, like that would just be such a asset. Like Julius is just a better asset by a wide margin than Ja Morant. So that's like a no right off the bat. So the second trade that you could do would be kind of a smorgasbord of players, which would be the main 3 players would be Nas, Mike Conley, and Rob Dillingham. Gets you within $500,000, and because the Wolves cannot, in any trade, they cannot send out more money than they receive. Other way around. They cannot receive more money than they send out, which, when trading with first apron teams, makes it, you need a dollar for dollar match, which is pretty much impossible. So the Wolves on addition, if they want to try to make this trade, in addition of sending out Nas, Mike, and Rob, they'd have to attach one more player. Could be Bones, could be Leonard Miller, could be whoever. They just need to make a fourth player. So it'd be a 4-for-1 trade. It'll almost certainly need to be a third team. Maybe you're sending out Terrence as that fourth player and you're getting someone back on the minimum to make sure, like, if they do send out 4 players for one player, they're going to have to sign at least 2, which second apron wise would be fine. The Wolves, especially when you're prorating it for half a season, like the Wolves would have enough money under the second apron to make that work. But even with that trade, which I do think sending out Nas, Mike, and Rob for Ja makes more sense than the first one, I still think that is just the risk of that trade, I just think is so damn high. Now, the reward is high too. There is certainly a possibility where you basically trade your whole bench for Ja Morant, and Ja goes back to being the all-star he was when the Wolves faced him in the playoffs. And if that were to happen, the Wolves would be like, that would obviously be the home run that would work out. Like, you'd just be trading so low on the guy. In a vacuum, I like that idea. I think I'm gonna end up just like I like the Wizards trading for Trae Young at the cheap. Like, that just makes sense. Why wouldn't you do that? And so I do think whoever ends up with Ja Morant, I'm probably going to like the trade for them, especially if it ends up being like the Kings, because your Kings, Leo, might as well. I just think the risk of doing it as the Wolves, you have to be so certain that you're going to get at least some of what Ja Morant used to be. And I don't know what, I do think like a lot of his play can be attributed, like he just needs a change of scenery, I think, at this point, unfortunately. I don't know how you could be confident based on what he's put on the floor the past, 2 or 3 years. I just don't think you can be confident in any of it. And so for me, for the Wolves to trade that much, I mean, even it's not even that much, obviously. Like, nah, it's basically Mike doesn't have a ton of value as an expiring vet. Rob, ugh. and then and then you're throwing in one more contract. So it's really like the big trade is Nas for Ja, and there's obviously, like, asset wise, like, I think that's fine enough. But like, I don't know. I personally, I just don't see it, and I'm saying all that. I don't think the Wolves are really close to making that sort of move. But just to give people, it's either Julius or Morant, which I just think is a non-starter, and even the smorgasbord of players they could theoretically send out. I don't think it makes sense. But with that also said, I think we're going to kind of run into the same roadblock when you're trading for everyone besides just trading for like a backup big at they're signing, like making moves on the margins. When any trade that they make that would significantly change your team is going to come with big risks.
Yeah, I agree with you largely on a lot of it. I mean, just to address the 2 trade, hypotheticals that you mentioned. The first one, I mean, Julius right now, current day, in their current forms, Julius is just a way better player than Ja is right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Julius makes Ja Morant makes Julius Randle look like Ray Allen from 3 right now as far as floor spacing. And like, obviously, if Julius going out, Nas would probably start. So, if that was the case, and the bench, I mean, would be hurt so bad from this. I mean, now you're talking about like no scoring potentials, threats off the bench.
Dante would likely slide.
Dante would move back, yeah, but I mean, it's still a thing where it's just, I feel like it would hurt the overall depth of the team, I think, too much, losing that. And then second, same thing, for that Nas, Mike, Rob, and something else trade. I do agree that's probably a little bit more palatable, but still something that I'm not sacrificing the depth of the Wolves, which is something that they already are struggling with this year. That we've seen. We thought that TJ would be ready. We thought Jalen Clark would probably be play. I mean, he's playing well, but maybe a bigger role. We definitely thought Rob would be better. We didn't think Mike would fall off as hard as he did. And so I think, with that, it's going to, if they ever did do something like that and TJ was still on the team, it would only be because they feel like they could really bet on TJ to be take a huge leap from how he's been playing this season so far. And, I just don't see that, especially considering his injury situation right now. So, overall though, the whole Ja Morant situation, it just does not move me at all. I don't like the fit. I don't like the fact that the team will have to spend months trying to figure out how to reconfigure themselves and just kind of nuking this season. If it does happen, will I somehow talk myself into it? I mean, I'm sure I will. Just like all the time, like when they traded for Rudy, I was like, oh man, I don't know about this. It took me a while to talk myself into it. Even with Julius Randle, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, but I talked myself into it. But I mean, you mentioned that is Ja kind of intentionally taking his value right now in terms of the way that he's playing? I mean, he's shooting 20% from three right now. This is a non-jump shooting player. So he's more exclusively in the mid-range and more or less in the paint. That's shooting 40% on the season right now, which is by far a career low. He's a 46% field goal, shooter for his career. Now, you look back to when the Wolves played him in the playoffs, that was peak Ja Morant. That was literally his best season. That was at the 2021-2022 season. He averaged 27 points, five and a half rebounds, almost 7 assists a game, and he was shooting 34%, which seems like crazy for Ja. But he was shooting nearly 50% from the field that season. And again, he's had a lot of injury wear and tear since then. He's had a lot of off the court issues since then as well too. But he does kind of crawl back towards that type of player again. Maybe he's doing a whole Vince Carter thing when he left the Raptors, where he just kind of Vince Carter intentionally was kind of not dunking and playing poorly and not really giving a shit for the Raptors. And when he went to the Nets, he all of a sudden started dunking and putting up huge numbers again. Maybe Ja will do that. I just don't want to take that bet with the Wolves because, again, like you said, that downside risk of this not working out, whether it's his health, whether it's off the court issues, or whether it's just like blowing up the depth that the Wolves had and the chemistry they have, that risks so many potential years of Anthony Edwards, heading into his prime right now, that I just do not feel like that's worth the risk of it. The upside, yeah, again, I understand, highlight reel, MVP vote getting Ja Morant is like great, but I still don't even think even at their peaks that was a great fit either, just between the two, between Ja and Ant. So yeah, I'm still out on that. Hopefully again some team like my Sacramento Kings will make a move for him, or again maybe Milwaukee does something crazy where they really just last ditch effort, try and pick him up. But yeah, I just hope it's not us.
Yeah, I think the team that trades for Ja Morant, where it would make sense is either a team that is kind of like solid but needs more, and is willing, and kind of like the Miami Heat, I think would kind of make some sense, right? Like a team like they're a good team, like they're 500, they'll probably make the playoffs, but like they're clearly like they're a step behind everyone else in the East, and it kind of feels like, well, where are you even going, right? Like they have solid players. So like that would make sense, or just like your Kings, obviously. Unfortunately, like I don't we should stop talking about the Kings. But like for the Wolves that have so much at stake, I mean, even I think maybe you could try to like in the offseason if there was something like, yeah, mid-season trade for Ja Morant. Like this team is just too good to do that. They're too good. And I like you, I don't the fit between him and Ant, I think would be tough, and especially the fit with him, Ant, and Julius on the roster, I think would be really tough. And they would need Ja to like play like basically like a off guard role or whatever. And just there's just not any indication that would be an easy transition for him. So I just think it's a non-starter.
If we have 40 million of salary going to a player that we really don't want on the team, then yeah, sure, let's go ahead and like, let's try it out. If we had like a Zach LaVine sitting on the team where it's like, hey, we really don't want this player on our team right now, and just kind of move him. Because I mean, you think about what Trey went for. I mean, for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert, basically a salary dump for Trae Young. And, I would say Trae Young, even though as flawed as he is, and I'm not the biggest Trae Young fan, like you would say that potentially right now he's better than what Ja Morant is. I mean, he doesn't have as long of an injury history or off the court history issue with them as well too, potentially. And so like if Trae is getting dumped, then what is Ja going to be netting for a potential player? Now, again, I know their situations are quite different and their upsides are different, but again, it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't feel like the Wolves should be giving up significant pieces for that at this point.
Yeah, and a big difference between those two is Ja doesn't make as much money as Trey, which is that's a big portion of it. Like I kind of in a vacuum again, having Trey on the Wolves, I think would have made some sense. But like he gets paid $50 million.
Yeah,
like the money was just never even close. Right. Like if they theoretically could have traded Julius for Trae Young, I don't hate it. But like they would have had to trade Julius and Dante, and it's like nope, out, nope. And even the Julius for trade would come with potholes too. I'm not saying I would have necessarily done that, but like makes more sense than this Ja trade. But yeah, I didn't think we would either of us would kind of come to the conclusion the Wolves should trade for Ja, but I think it's more of an like an instructive, like any trade the Wolves try to make is going to be really hard, and especially if they're trading any of those top six, it's hard to every trade comes with potholes or comes with big risks. And if you're not trading one of those top 6, there's not really enough money behind them to make a big trade. The only thing what you could do is leave Nas and take like Mike and Rob, and that's $16 million. You could try to go to get a $16 million player, but I think trading Mike comes with potential locker room. Maybe they should just be able to overcome not having Mike Conley on this team, but and trading Rob comes with just that would be an admission that that was a big swing and miss that you made. So it'll be tough. Like you mentioned, Kyle Anderson is probably the dream. I think Kyle Anderson would be fairly darn useful in this roster, because I think you could play him. I think Kyle Anderson would fit, and obviously he's not the same player as he was 2 seasons ago, but you could play him without taking minutes away from Nas or Julius, right? You could find minutes for him that way. But
well, I will say this, Ryan. My last 2 cents of the whole Jaw thing is that, are the Wolves a team right now that needs to desperately take a big risk swing? And I think the answer is no. Now, look, are they as good as the Thunder in a vacuum? Probably not, but they've proven they can't beat the Thunder pretty much at full strength. And they've proven that they can beat the Spurs, and even they lost the Nuggets in OT on Christmas, but they've shown that they can compete for that. So I don't think they're at that point where it's hey, we really need to make an all-in move, if that all-in move is for someone like Ja Morant. So I think that's just kind of where I settle on that, where it's I don't think the time is right for a player like that, especially. So
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they're 26-14. I agree with you. They've played too well to make that big of a swing. But let's go on to our 2 words. Mine: stay safe. It could have been peaceful protest here too. We already talked about it at the top, but it's been a tough week in Minneapolis, and you just keep. I've been seeing the peaceful protest stuff, and at least peaceful from the protester side of it. Just hoping everyone can stay safe. We're hoping for no more violence, no more people losing their lives. But I'm really happy to see so many people having their voices heard. But Leo, your 2 words.
Similar to you, I'm gonna say stick together. I think not even just for the Wolves, but also your community as well too. I'm wearing this Jake's Graph's sweater, the State of Hoops here, just kind of in solidarity with y'all over there. I've seen a lot of posts on Blue Sky, just kind of mentioning there's more of us than there are them. And I think sure, maybe the other side might have more weapons or self-proclaimed jurisdiction, over the situation. But there's strength in numbers. As a community, I want to urge y'all, continue to fight back in the ways that you can, peacefully, whatever the case is. But don't give in. Continue to resist. And again, stick together. I am also there with y'all in spirit. Again, anything that y'all ever need, feel free to, let me know. I'm more than happy to, get things out, with the platform that, Ryan and I have, and with Candace Hoopus. If there's ways that we can help the community, we'll be more than happy to kind of share that, and even on our pod. So, and then for the Wolves, same thing, stick together, stay the course. We knew this was going to be a tough stretch. They're going to continue to self-correct between games, even in games like we saw today against the Spurs. So I want them to continue to stick together. Do not blow it up for Ja Morant. I know the highlight reels and the TikToks are going to be great if Ja's on the team, but no, stay the course, stick together. This team is also proving that there is strength in their numbers as well.
Yeah, and I will shout out. Probably should have done this at the top, but I'll do it here. Nate Pence, who is a Wolves fan, a Lynx fan. They are running a food drive. So basically for families that don't feel comfortable leaving their homes, and just anyone that needs food around the Twin Cities right now. So Nate Pence, Pentz is the last name on Blue Sky. You can find his account. They are doing a food drive. They're buying from local businesses and spreading the food out and diapers and wipes. And so for people in the area, you can contact them to go to their drop-off locations, or if you're out of the area or also in the area, they will take money and go buy the supplies themselves. So Nate Pence on Blue Sky, and then on Twitter, you can just go. You can go on my account, scroll down a little bit. I reposted their stuff, but Lydia Kauppi on the bad website on X, Kauppi is the last name. They're being obviously, you always want to make sure when you donate to stuff that you vet the people. They are posting the receipts, both incoming money, outgoing money, so that make sure that the books are balanced there, obviously. So if you have a few extra dollars or whatever, please feel free to donate to them, as it supports the Minneapolis community and the people that are not that are going through it right now, and don't feel comfortable leaving their homes, which is understandable in this. So yeah,
shout out Nate Lydia for sure. Yeah.
Yep. If you have any extra to spend, obviously not all of us have any extra, but that's one place to go. But thank you everyone for listening. For Leo and Ryan, have a good night.
Get home and drive safe, extra safe.
Go Wolves.
Are you